Could democracy really be on the verge of collapse? I mean, is that even possible? We're diving into a pretty urgent issue today, what people are calling a meaning crisis. And we're going to look at the role of AI, whether it's making things worse or if it could actually help. The stuff you sent over is fascinating. It really shows how this crisis is affecting everyone. I mean, you can see it in the anxiety, the distrust, all the political polarization. It's everywhere.
It's interesting, isn't it, the way AI is tied up in all of this, especially these large language models, things like ChatGPT. We're so focused on AI solving all our problems, but what about how it can be used to manipulate us? Like how it can warp our sense of reality. There's this term bullshitting. It was coined by the philosopher Harry Frankfurt. It basically means presenting information in a way that makes people stop caring if it's true or not.
Yeah, it's not just theoretical. Like that awful story about the 14-year-old who committed suicide after talking to one of those AI chatbots.
Yeah.
It's a tragic example of how AI can take advantage of our need to connect with others, especially vulnerable people.
Absolutely. It really raises the question of what's even real anymore, which brings us to the heart of the meaning crisis. This disconnect from any kind of shared reality. You must see this in your own work. I mean, how important is it to have accurate, reliable information?
It's fundamental. And when that breaks down, we see some pretty disturbing stuff. People retreating into virtual worlds, the rise of all these conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
It's like we're living through a virtual exodus. That's actually the title of one of the books you sent.
Exactly. And it spills over into politics, too. Real debate is gone. Now it's just these adversarial standoffs, everyone locked into their own version of reality. It's a zero-sum game that just erodes trust. And ultimately, it undermines the whole democratic process.
It's like we've forgotten how to talk to each other, how to actually engage with different viewpoints without just throwing out those pre-packaged talking points.
Right. And that's where we need to understand the difference between intelligence and rationality. AI might be intelligent, sure, but it doesn't have the self-awareness to examine its own biases. That's what true rationality requires. Think of Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher. He was totally committed to the truth, even when it meant challenging the powerful, and it cost him his life.
His story is a reminder that wisdom is more than just knowledge. It's about constantly questioning our assumptions and being open to changing our minds.
Absolutely. And there's actually research that shows collaborative problem solving works better. When you have different perspectives coming together, you get more rational and effective solutions. Our brains are wired for dialogue. That back and forth helps us get closer to the truth.
So are we just doomed? I mean, is AI manipulation going to take over? And will democracy collapse? Well, history shows us that societies have faced these kinds of meaning crises before, and they've come through them.
Yeah, like the Axial Age, that came after the Bronze Age collapsed. You had all these incredibly influential philosophical and religious ideas emerging. They shaped human thought for centuries. And then there's the Hellenistic period, after Alexander the Great's empire fell. That's when we saw schools of thought like Stoicism popping up. They offered people tools to deal with a world that felt like it was constantly in flux.
It is encouraging, isn't it? We're not the first to deal with these huge existential questions.
And just like those societies develop new ways of understanding the world, we need to develop what I call an ecology of practices. We need ways to navigate this current crisis.
Ecology of practices. That's interesting. Can you tell me more about what that means?
I'm talking about tools and techniques that can help us become wiser and more resilient, especially in the face of all this AI-driven manipulation, things like meditation and mindfulness, actively seeking out diverse perspectives, anything that strengthens our connection to reality and our ability to think critically about the information we're bombarded with.
So it's not just about what we know. It's about developing the mental and emotional skills we need to navigate a world overflowing with information and misinformation.
Exactly. Which brings us to the idea of personal responsibility and leadership. A good CEO needs vision and self-awareness to lead a company. Well, we all need those qualities to navigate this meaning crisis.
So we each need to become our own CEOs, in a way, responsible for leading ourselves through this difficult landscape.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. We need to be able to lead ourselves, make choices that are in line with our values, even when there's so much noise and distraction around us.
You've given us a lot to think about, and it's not exactly a cheerful picture, but you did mention some potential solutions. Where do we even begin to tackle this meaning crisis?
Well, one place is the book you sent over, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. It offers a kind of roadmap. The author, John Vervaeke, argues we need to revive philosophy, but not in the academic sense, more like a love of wisdom, a commitment to seeking the truth. And we can't do that alone. We need communities that are dedicated to these values.
I see what you mean. Humans are social. We need interaction to learn and grow, sharing ideas and experiences.
Exactly. Think about those studies we were talking about, the ones about how groups solve problems better than individuals. That's our dialogical nature at work. Different perspectives, respectful debate. It helps us refine our understanding of reality.
So how do we create these communities, these spaces where real dialogue can actually happen?
It starts with each of us, cultivating that inner longing for truth, being willing to question our own assumptions, and then finding other people who feel the same way. It could be anything, a book club, a discussion group, even an online forum. The format isn't as important as the shared goal.
It's not about finding all the answers by ourselves. It's about creating spaces where we can wrestle with these big questions together.
Exactly. Like in ancient Greece, they had the agora. It was a public space where people gathered to debate, Share news, talk philosophy. We need modern-day agoras, physical and virtual, where we can bring back that spirit of inquiry and dialogue.
So we've talked about the challenges and some ways to address them. But what about AI? Can it actually be part of the solution? Or will it always be a force for manipulation and division?
That's the big question, isn't it? The way AI is now, it's great at imitating human intelligence, but it doesn't have that deep understanding, that capacity for real empathy and connection. It can't be a true partner in our search for meaning, at least not yet.
A lot of people are talking about imbuing AI with ethics, giving it a sense of responsibility. Is that a path forward?
It's worth exploring, but first we have to figure out our own values, our own understanding of what a meaningful life is. We can't program ethical AI if we haven't done the ethical work ourselves.
We can't just outsource our morals to machines.
Exactly, and even if we manage to create AI that aligns with our values, we still have to stay involved. We can't just let it take over. We need to be active participants in creating meaning, constantly questioning, evaluating, and refining our understanding of the world, with or without AI.
So it all comes back to personal responsibility. Technology can't solve the meaning crisis for us. We have to do the work.
Yes, and that starts with self-awareness, understanding our own biases, our vulnerabilities to manipulation, the way our brains are wired to see patterns and meaning even when they're not there.
So we need healthy skepticism, a willingness to question not only the information we come across, but also our own interpretations of it.
Right, and we need to develop a resilience to uncertainty. We have to embrace the unknown and accept that the big questions in life might not have easy answers.
This has been a really insightful conversation. Before we finish, I want to bring it back to our listeners. What's the most important thing for someone who's feeling lost or overwhelmed in this age of AI and information overload?
That's a great question. I would say, remember that you are not alone. There are millions of people wrestling with these same questions, the same feelings of uncertainty and confusion. The meaning crisis is a collective crisis, and the solution has to be collective too. So reach out, connect with others, engage in dialogue. Remember that the journey towards meaning is something we're on together.
That's beautifully put. Even in this digital age, when we can feel so isolated, human connection is still vital to our well-being. It's how we navigate a complex world.
And don't forget, there are resources to help you on this journey. Books like Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, communities that are dedicated to exploring these questions, even online forums where you can connect with people who are going through similar things. Don't be afraid to ask for help or to share your own insights and experiences. We learn and grow together.
That's a powerful message of hope. We're not just passive victims of our circumstances. We have choices. We can choose how we respond to the challenges around us. We can create meaning in our own lives and in the world, even when things feel uncertain and everything is changing.
It's about realizing we have agency, even when it feels like everything's out of control. That's a powerful thing to remember.
You've really given us a lot to think about today. Before we wrap up, I want to go back to AI one last time. We've talked about the potential downsides, but we've also touched on the idea that maybe, just maybe, AI could actually be helpful in our search for meaning. Is there a scenario, do you think, where AI could actually help us get through this meaning crisis and help us build a better world, a more just and compassionate world?
It's a fascinating question. Imagine if AI could help us break down our own biases, or help us have real conversations across ideological divides, or even create personalized learning paths for people who are searching for wisdom and truth.
It's almost like AI could become a sort of digital Socrates, guiding us towards self-awareness and understanding.
Exactly. But to get there, we need to fundamentally change how we develop and use AI. It's not about just making machines smarter. It's about making sure they're aligned with our deepest human values.
So we need to make conscious choices about the kind of future we want to create with AI.
Absolutely. And that's a responsibility we all share, not just the people who are building AI. We need philosophers, ethicists, artists, even everyday people. We need everyone to be part of the conversation about what kind of world we want to build with these incredibly powerful tools.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. We've covered a lot of ground, from the meaning crisis itself to the potential role of AI in shaping our future.
It's been great exploring these complex issues with you.
Before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked about the importance of communities of meaning, spaces where we can connect and have real conversations. But what about people who feel isolated, who maybe don't have access to those kinds of communities? What would you say to them?
Start small. Start with yourself. Nurture that curiosity you have, that desire to understand the world and your place in it. Read books, listen to podcasts, join online discussions, and don't be afraid to reach out. There are a lot more people out there than you might think who are grappling with these same questions. The internet, for all its problems, can be a powerful way to connect.
It's a good reminder that even in this hyper-connected world, we can forget about the simple act of reaching out, of connecting with others who share our values and our desire to understand.
And remember, finding meaning is a lifelong journey. You'll have moments of doubt, moments of despair, but you'll also have moments of incredible insight and connection. Embrace the whole journey. Be patient with yourself and trust that you're not alone.
Thank you. Those are inspiring words. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the meaning crisis and the potential of AI. We hope this conversation has sparked your own curiosity and given you the courage to create meaning in your own life and in the world around you.